welcome to GMI, the Guitar and Music Institute podcast number 40. If you're a teacher of guitar on one-to-one, then you may be interested in this podcast. I'm talking to Chris Dixon about community guitar groups, and Chris has developed a community guitar group in a place called East Lothian, which is 25 miles away from Edinburgh city centre. It's a thriving community, and I didn't really know much about community guitar groups, and it was great to actually meet Chris again, someone who I've known on and off and used to teach many years ago. Coming up is all about Chris and his life in music and how he got into the job he now does. I think you're going to find this of real interest and see how it can benefit not just one or two people, but the greater community that you live in. Just because you're listening to this podcast, why not come over to the gmiguitarshop.com. You can get 15% off with the code that you can see on our website, which is available to view at guitarmusicinstitute.com. I'm trying to keep my intros a little bit briefer these days, so hopefully I'm managing to do that. So without further ado, let's get right into it with my interview with Chris Dixon about community guitar groups. Chris, hello. It's great to actually be looking face to face with the person you're actually interviewing, which isn't normal for me. I think you're the third person. Good to see you. How are you today?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yeah.
As you know, this goes all around the world. Seems to be an inordinate amount of people in America listen to this podcast. And today it's about community guitar groups. And I know that you run a community guitar group. And I thought, why not get Chris over to talk about community guitar groups? So, first of all, could you maybe tell the folk listening a little bit about yourself, your background, and then maybe tell us about the community guitar group that you run?
Okay, sure. So I grew up in Santa Cruz in California, and that's where my musical training came to its fruition to a certain extent. I started playing guitar probably when I was about 9 years old, and it was just learning in school, so in primary school. And what we did was, I would come home and we'd learn a few chords, the usual stuff. And I would come home and I would listen to my parents' Beatles records and just try and figure out the melody lines on like the E string or something, which was really my start. And then from there, took private lessons and did a little bit of classical stuff. And then it really started when we moved to, that was in Hong Kong actually. I lived in Hong Kong for a while. Yeah.
So why is your dad in the army or something like that?
We were on the run,
You were on the run, yeah. Okay.
No, he worked for an electronics company, various ones, but we ended up in Northern California, in Silicon Valley, as a result of that, and in Santa Cruz specifically. So when I moved there, it was I think 1984 or something like that, and
what age would you have been then, Chris?
About 13.
Okay.
13. So been playing for a few years, and of course at that point you started to hear guys like Van Halen and some of the heavy metal stuff, and especially if you lived in that part of the world. So of course as soon as I heard Eruption, that was my ticket to buying an electric guitar and going down that route. But that was really my start, and then from there I studied at high school and privately. Went on to join a jazz band, was part of my high school jazz band, and one of the great things that I like about the American setup is that they really have this fantastic infrastructure within schools to promote the arts. They have extracurricular jazz bands, orchestras, all that kind of stuff. We do that stuff here too, but I don't think it's on the same kind of level. I mean, the high school jazz bands go out and they tour and stuff like that we just don't really do as much of. My high school jazz band practices started at 7 a.m. So we would get in for school at 7 a.m. We would do an hour practice every single morning, going through the charts and then start your regular school day. And it's like if you sign up for that, that's what you commit to and that's what you have to do, I think it's part of possibly their frame of mind, their state of mind, Again, I think they also have this infrastructure that allows that. But again, this ties in with the community stuff because they foster that from a structured point of view. It's not ad hoc. It's not as grassroots necessarily as what we do over here in Scotland. It is more formal, I think.
Do you think it's more individualistic in Europe as opposed to America?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I can't speak for Europe as a whole, but certainly my experiences of Britain, I think that would be true. Yeah.
Right.
From the States, I moved over here to Scotland, and
so what age was that, Chris?
I think I was about 21.
The reason I know Chris is because I used to teach in a further education college in Edinburgh, and they had a course, a 2-year course, and I was fortunate enough to meet and teach Chris on that course. And we've, like so many of the students that I had back then, we've kept in contact on and off as the years have flown by.
I went to Glasgow first. I went to Clydebank College, who have a great music programme. And I did electronic music and recording over there for a year, and then moved over to Edinburgh to do the popular music studies, I think, or modern musicianship, I think it was called at the time. And that was at Jewel and Esk Valley College, which I think is now Edinburgh.
It is, yes.
Edinburgh College, yeah. After that, I went down to Barnsley College and did the popular music studies course down there.
So was that a degree?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So did you just do? So was it an extra 2 years or just a year?
It was 2 years, but actually I left after a year because I had done about 5 or 6 years of studying music, and I actually got to the point where I just wanted to do something else.
So did you become disillusioned?
A little bit, I think so, yeah. So I can't remember the exact motivation behind sort of stopping playing, if you like. I think I had, as you say, probably just disillusionment. But ultimately, the calling to come back and play music was stronger. So, I did come back to that. It was always going to happen, I think. But shortly after that, I got asked if I could teach guitar. I'd been doing a little bit of lessons privately from my house, but one of my colleagues was teaching piano at Mansfield School of Music. So,
which is going to come up very shortly.
Absolutely. So she asked me, can you teach? I thought, oh yeah, I think so. So I went along and was invited to audition for Roy McGilvery, who owned the music school at the time. And we sat and we had a chat, and I think I played him some stuff. And he said, well, you seem like the right guy for the job, so when can you start, sort of thing. So I initially only had, I think, a Thursday night, maybe 2 or 3 lessons, and that just grew. Roy was really helpful in just, I've got another person for guitar, would you like to teach them? And
So you do teach a community guitar group out of Mansfield School of Music, but you managed to clear up why it was called Mansfield, because Mansfield is a northern English town, and the actual Mansfield School of Music is in a place called Musselburgh,
yep,
which is in East Lothian, about 25 miles or so out of Edinburgh. So the reason it's called Mansfield
is because it was Roy's middle name, so Roy
right.
Mansfield McGilvery. Yeah,
right, okay. Yes. So that was enlightenment.
Yeah.
So you had this first. You started doing Thursdays and enjoyed it.
Absolutely, and that just grew, and eventually, at my peak, I think I had about 40 students a week, all being taught between the hours of 6 o'clock and 9 p.m. So not a lot of free time in that respect. At this time, essentially a full-time musician, because at that point in my life, I was doing Mid Lothian Council guitar instruction through the schools. I was teaching Monday through Friday in the evenings, I think Saturday morning as well. And I was also playing in a wedding band, so out doing gigs every week. And it was great, I really enjoyed it. So there was a lot going on at that time, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Chris, so from all of that background, can you tell us how we get to the East Lothian Community Guitar Group? Is there a thread from the Mansfield School of Music?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, East Lothian is East Lothian Guitar Lessons, I should say, is still private tuition essentially. I decided to rebrand to a certain extent and use that rebranding to create an internet presence and then marketing and so on and so forth. And I think that's even more valuable today. In fact, it's the only way to do business today, really. So
when you say that there's this community aspect running through the guitar group,
yeah,
how would you define that as opposed to a person just teaching guitar, say?
absolutely. So one of the great things about working with Mansfield School of Music is that I am a guitar teacher who is part of that school. We also have drum lessons. We also have singing lessons, violin, piano. It's very, very bagpipes. If you would like to do that, it's fantastic, you know. And Caitlin McGilvery, Roy's daughter, and Jamie Lang, who is her business partner in Mansfield School of Music, they decided that, sadly Roy passed away a few years ago, but Caitlin and Jamie decided they would take on his business. We agreed that the partnership between Mansfield and East Lothian guitar lessons worked very well, so we kept that intact. And Caitlin is instrumental in running all sorts of great shows, concerts and so on within the community, so especially within Musselburgh and East Lothian. And she puts together all sorts of showcases for the music school, charity events, and also runs a theatre group within the music school. So very, very active. And all of these individual aspects, guitar, piano, etc., they all feed into that. So these groups, if you like, that are run through Mansfield School of Music are not necessarily all, you don't have to pay to join them. There's many, many different things. Even within Musselburgh, there's the youth players, for example, and they are constantly looking for musicians. So they're taking children and putting them into amateur shows, and of course they want musicians to play that stuff. So
am I getting this right? The community aspect is the fact that it actually pulls from a whole different artistic, even if I could speak, disciplines, and in that sense it goes right across the whole area, the whole region.
Absolutely, yes.
What is the demographic? Is it mainly young people that you're dealing with?
For the theatre groups and things like that, it is mainly young people, high school kids and primary kids, and a few university kids as well. In terms of my specific demographic of guitar, that actually is a whole separate subject, because I'll give you an example. What I found is that 6 years ago, say, my demographic was teenage boys. They wanted to learn rock music, and they would come along, and I'd have queues of these guys at the door wanting to learn guitar. My main demographic now is primary children and retired people, and that's very interesting. It's moved that way over the last 5 years.
Do you think there's more retired people leaving earlier with?
I think that's part of it. That retired people
are younger.
Are younger, and they need to be doing stuff. But they also are fantastic clients, I should say, because one of the things that it is, if you have a primary student, or I get this a lot. I get, hi, my son who is 6 years old really wants to learn the guitar. Okay, does he? Does he really? Or are you just suggesting to him that he learn the guitar? I mean, that's fine, we can do that, but when you're 6 years old, do you really know what you want to do? It's a case of, trying lots of different things and seeing what you like, I suppose. But with a retired person, they are more of the frame of mind that, well, you know what, I've always wanted to learn guitar, so I'm going to contact this guy who is going to charge me money to teach me guitar. So they're more aware of the commitment required, both financially in terms of time, to actually sit down and do it. So actually I really enjoy teaching people that are retired, because they actually put the work in.
Now, getting back to Mansfield School of Music, do you own that school, in a sense, private school, own its own buildings?
Yes.
Right, so how does that work out? How would that work out for people around the world listening to this who might think that's quite a good idea, putting together something more than, say, just me giving guitar lessons, and actually reaching out to other disciplines, artistic disciplines and instrument teachers? That must be a real issue in getting places that are big enough to take that.
Actually, so it is out there if you want to look for it. You have to sit and go, okay, well, I'm going to run a business here. this is my business. What do I need? Do I want to run it from a physical location? Because as we all know, in this day and age, you can run guitar lessons without a physical location. That's not a problem, as GMI do to a certain extent. But there's still that demand for people to come to a physical location to learn from a real person, which I think will never go away really. As much as the internet is a huge player in guitar lessons these days, there is still a huge demand. I still get calls. I had a call this morning about, can I come and get guitar lessons, please? And any aspect of your business, or if you're thinking about starting a guitar school or a tuition service or anything like that, that stuff is out there. Either you just go down the route of just trying to find a building that you can use or rent, or the other aspect is that you do get involved in more of a community sense and look at community centres or other aspects or other buildings which would be willing to rent you a certain amount of space. Churches come to mind. They always have extra areas within the church, extra rooms and so on, which they're quite happy to either rent out or let people have them sometimes for free.
And I suppose the great thing about community scenarios is that you're having different people of different ages who play different instruments.
Yeah.
So there's a great chance of, bouncing musical ideas and groups forming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a big thing because really that's something that I think is missing from the internet at the moment. One of the things that you don't get in the internet is that immediate physical interaction with actual human beings where you say, hey, I think I might like to, form a band with you. And that's an important thing because at the end of the day, we still learn to play guitar for a performance reason. I mean, some people are quite happy to sort of pick up the guitar and learn to play it and sit in their bedroom playing it. But I think really everybody picks up the guitar because they want to show other people that they can play the guitar. And forming a band with someone is the sort of pinnacle of that, really. You get together with someone and, you play music. So being in an environment where you can talk to other musicians or other guitarists, and high school is actually very good for that as well. There's some great stuff happening in Scottish high schools at the moment. There's all that sort of community aspect and the interaction between human beings. I would like to talk a little bit about a couple of the other schools, if you like, or community centres.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was about to ask.
Yeah, which are in East Lothian. One of them being Lamp House in Haddington, which is in East Lothian, and they basically run a sort of, I guess it's like a rock school to put it in really simple terms. Come along and we will show you how to play in a band. And the other one is Red House over in Port Seton.
Does it have to have house?
I guess it does. Yeah, it's East Lothian, so the East Lothian thing.
Yeah,
yeah. And both of these, I think Red House actually is even more community in that it's possibly just a nominal fee that you show up and you pay a couple of quid or something like that, and they try and organize all these guys into bands and organize gigs and things for these bands that.
So do you work with these other community groups from time to time?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. What I have done is feed them guitarists, and that again is an important part of the community aspect. In a lot of these guys that I've taught have gone in and been able to go into these environments and play very successfully. Callum Beattie, who is one of my students, who is doing very, very well at the moment. He's got singles out. Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. So he came to me for lessons. He's from Musselburgh, and then went over and did the stuff over at Red House, and also Johnny Pearson, who's doing very well for himself as well.
So one of the questions I've got here in front of me, it's an interesting one, is do music schools still have a place in the community in 2019?
Yeah, very much so, because it becomes that hub of people meeting each other, and it becomes an activity where children, teenagers, whatever, adults as well, to a certain extent, can go take their whatever they've been learning and focus it on something. As we all know, we're becoming more and more of an internet society, so rather than actually going out, we're quite happy to sit in and look at our tablets or YouTube, your phone, whatever you want to watch. And, that's great, and there's lots of advantages of doing that. But at the same time, I think there needs to be more of a movement towards people getting together and actually, playing music.
You were talking about people, if they wanted to set up their own community guitar association or group, the first thing they'll need is space.
Yeah.
And you were talking about perhaps thinking about churches. Mm-hmm. Totally get that. Maybe even schools. How much money does it cost people to start up? Because you would have to do things like advertising, I guess, mm-hmm. and get the message out there. Can you give us some idea about the sort of costs involved?
Generally, well, I think to do let's talk about a community group in the sense of, I just want to get some people together to play some music, to potentially teach them how to play guitar better, and to get them all playing a song better, and potentially take them forward to performing. And I want to get these people from the locality, if you like, and just have a hub for them to do that. So there's my goal. So I think in terms of how much that's going to cost, probably very little to start with, because you talked there about advertising. Facebook, and one of the ways that I would do that is I would join your local community group. So, where I'm from, it would be the Musselburgh Facebook page, for example. So you go on there and say, hello there, I live in Musselburgh, I'd like to join your page. So you get accepted, and then you say, hi everyone, I would like to put together a community guitar group. Here's what I would like to do. I'd like to teach you some songs. I'd like to get everybody playing those songs, and anyone is welcome. And then you would see what sort of response you get to that. And if a few people say, hey, that's a great idea, I'd really like to do that, then you can start looking at, well, where do we do it? And at that point, you can start to contact various places. It might be the local community centre, it might be a church. You probably don't want to be renting a space on a permanent basis at that point, because then that becomes a business as opposed to a community group, if you like. There are plenty of spaces that are community.
Sorry, Chris, just to cut across you. What is the definition of a community association doing anything in a sense? It has to be not for profit?
It's a good question. I think that I define between private lessons and community guitar groups in a different way. So East Lothian guitar lessons, whilst it feeds into the community and also feeds into Mansfield and also places like Lamp House in Haddington and so on, there's that community aspect of that, but that still has a fee attached to it in a certain sense, in that, yes, there's ultimately the goal to, not the ultimate goal, but part of the goal is you want to make some profit. You want to run a business. I think that when we talk about a community group, it's something that you're trying to encourage people within the community to get together to do something that's worthwhile. And that shouldn't really cost a lot of money to these people that are wanting to do it. It also shouldn't really cost a lot of money to the person who's trying to organize it. So you have to balance that with, what is my goal here? What exactly is it going to cost me, or what is it going to cost the people that I want to have involved in this? It depends how you define it, as you say, but in this particular instance, I'm talking about a community group where you're just trying to get people together to play some music and to learn from each other.
Specifically talking about East Lothian guitar lessons, which I guess is sort of a community, is part of a bigger community, but it's certainly a business.
Yeah.
What do you teach the people that come to? Do you teach them exams, take them through exam courses, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do the Associated Board exams, we do the Rock School exams, and the Trinity exams. So The rock school stuff I think is great. If you want to learn rock, then that is probably one of the best structures that you can use, because it is very structured. You go from a debut grade all the way up to grade 8. And if you can accomplish grade 8, then you're a really good guitar player, really good guitar player. And the same is true of the associated board and the Trinity stuff, but that really is more classical, though they have started to publish more pop and rock stuff. I think that rock school sort of beat them to it in that respect. The format they use, I think, is fantastic. It's subjective, obviously, but part of the reason that I use that is because the SQA, which is the Scottish Qualifications Authority, recognises all three of those actually as valid exam material. So if you have a student that comes along and says, well, I'm doing music in high school and I need to get through my exam in high school, then you can use that rock school stuff or that associated board material, and it is recognised and valid as material to use for an exam, which is important.
Do you need to have lots of gear and tech stuff?
Oh, okay.
Do people expect that when they come?
I keep it really basic, to be honest, in terms of the actual gear. I'm specifically doing guitar lessons, but within Mansfield School of Music we have drum kits and all that kind of stuff. I use a couple of small amplifiers, and actually my setup for teaching guitar, and this is something that guitar teachers might be interested in, because I found it very, very useful, is I use one amplifier and I have a special pedal board that I've created, which is very, very cheap actually. You can get this for less than £100, I think. But basically I have, the first thing is you ask the student to bring along their own guitar. One of the things I get asked a lot is, I want to take guitar lessons, do I need a guitar? Which to any which to any guitar teacher, you're going to laugh at that. But it's a genuine question. You get it all the time. And the answer, of course, is, well, yes, you need to practice at home. Coming to a guitar lesson is only half an hour or an hour of your week. You then need to go and put in 5 times as much as that on your own. So you need a guitar. So my students will bring a guitar and a lead, and they plug into a splitter box. So I have an A-B splitter on my board, which means that I can switch between my guitar or their guitar, or use both at the same time. That then goes into a multi-effects unit. I just use an inexpensive one. I think it's a Zoom, so that we can dial in any sound we like. And what I actually like about the Zoom one is that they have onboard drums, so you can get a beat going really quickly. And then the last bit in the chain is a looper pedal, and then that goes out to the amp. So I really only need one amp, and this is what I use. This isn't what you need. You just need a couple of guitars, nylon strings, whatever you want. You don't need to spend a lot of money on stuff, but this is what I use. And the advantages of using this is that you can very, very quickly just record a backing track. You can go, okay, here's some chords I want you to play over. So you start your drum beat, turn on your looper, play your chord progression, and then let it loop, and let that student solo over the top, or whatever the lesson happens to be. And the great thing is that you can record them doing it and play it back to them and go, this is what you sound like. What do you think?
That's really helpful, isn't it, for people to actually hear themselves?
Hear themselves play, yeah, absolutely.
Technology is just mind-boggling. Do you do Skype lessons, just as an aside?
Yeah, I do. I do Skype lessons. I have a designated night where I do that, because I need to be in... well, I say that. I was going to say I need to be at my house to do that, but actually I now do it from the music school. I teach on a Tuesday night, and then as soon as my last lesson, I think it's about 8 o'clock or something, I switch from doing in-person lessons to doing Skype lessons on a Tuesday night.
Well, that's great, because obviously most of the people listening to this podcast won't be in East Lothian.
Absolutely, yeah.
So just as a little bit of I guess you've told us all about the community guitar stuff and how to think about moving into that. Now it's time for your little advert.
Sure.
Are you willing to say how much it would cost people for lessons, or give them a ballpark figure if they should want to come to you? And also, in a sense, what should people charge if they they want to charge for giving
Absolutely,
guitars?
yeah, it's a good question. If you come to me for lessons, you're looking at about £15 for a half-hour lesson, which is really the sort of going rate amongst guitar teachers at the moment. If you're
So what's that in dollars, Chris?
in dollars,
it's falling pound, $19 maybe.
Yeah, about that. So I think if you're in America and you're charging about $20 for a 30-minute lesson, that's probably the going rate. I don't know, maybe it's 25. But what you should do is, if you're thinking about getting into that, is look at your local area or your internet and look at what other people are charging.
And then undercut them.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You don't undercut people.
It's a race to the bottom.
No. What you do is you've got to be a bit more clever about it. You got to have special rates. So here's your rate: £15 or $20 an hour, whatever you want to charge. And then you have packages that you put together. So if you get this package, it's going to cost you a little bit less. If you have this package, it's going to cost you a little, cost you that much. But, from a business point of view, there are a lot of aspects to think about. Gone are the days where you could just be a guitar teacher. You now have to be a business person. Teaching guitar is a percentage of what you do as a guitar teacher. You also have to think about your marketing. You also have to think about the business side of it. Are you paying your taxes, all the accounting, etc., etc.
And there's also disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In Scotland, just for the listeners, we have a thing called Disclosure Scotland. So anyone who's involved in teaching young people or people perhaps who are vulnerable, you need to go through this thing called Disclosure Scotland. Do you know if they have that in America, Chris?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the American system is. That certainly is something that...
I keep talking about America, sorry, but I mean there's many countries in the world. But just
Australia.
Chris has been to... We should actually be talking about Hong Kong as well.
Hong Kong, yeah, absolutely. And Australia, I was born there. So.
Oh, right, okay. Is there any countries you haven't been to? Right, okay.
Yeah, there's a few. But,
Chris, thanks for giving us your time and the benefit of your experience and knowledge in this area. It'd be great to hear what people think about it, and hopefully we'll hear of some new guitar communities springing up around the world.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, folks. Start teaching. It's great. It's really great.
Well, that wraps it up for another episode from GMI. I've been really heartened to see that hundreds of people have been downloading the podcast the last 2 months. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there's been a real shoot up in the amount of people who are actually listening to the podcast, which is very heartening to know that I'm not just talking to myself. So, if you've enjoyed this podcast, or indeed any of the podcasts that I've created for GMI, then please share them. It's always welcome to know that it's getting out there. It's a real shot in the arm to see such high numbers starting to download it. For some reason, really popular in America, and the next one is the UK, followed by Japan. So hello to everyone out there in Japan. I'm going to try and make another podcast real soon before the Christmas holidays. We'll have to wait and see what comes up. Got a few irons in the fire. But wherever you are in the world listening to this, from me, Jed Brocky, thanks for listening, and I'll see you I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.